you know, it's a little bit of a sharp learning curve. So yes, now the session has been recorded. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna move to the next question. And we're gonna go for about 5 more minutes with questions before we shift to the practice. Okay. So we will be able to see the recorded session after starting from, unfortunately, right now. So what I was talking just before that is not going to get recorded. Okay, so there's a question to repeat dosage of vitamin C. Yes, so the dosage is 250 to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. Most of the time, what you're going to find in the stores is probably 500 to 1,000 milligram chews, capsules, or tablets. Either of those is fine. Again, going way above 1,000 3 times a day just doesn't make any sense. You will probably going to start getting diarrhea if you're going to keep pushing the dosing, and it's probably not advisable. But at the doses I just mentioned, that's appropriate. Okay, so the next question. All right. Is your vitamin C recommendation the same as taking it to bowel tolerance? Not at all. This is a completely unrelated, and I would not going to discuss this because taking a very high dose to bowel tolerance has nothing to do with the immune system. It has more to do with detoxification, and it is unrelated. Okay, face masks. I highly recommend you to use face mask every time you leave the house, any reason, under any circumstance, no matter what are you planning on doing. You're going to a park, you're going to a shop, it doesn't really matter. You can take the face mask off if you're in the natural settings where there's really no people around you. But when you can't predict if suddenly somebody comes into your close contact, I highly recommend wearing the mask. What that translates to, have a mask wherever you're in the city, walking around, when you're planning on going from a house to any shop, in the transit, anywhere, in the Uber, in the Lyft. I would probably not wear it in my own car, but everywhere else, except for the nature when you're alone or with a person who lives with you. And otherwise, yes, do wear the mask. Can eating a lot of foods with vitamin C is enough? Great question. It could be, but you have to be quite proactive. If you're only consuming recommended daily allowance of 60 milligrams a day, I'll tell you for sure you're going to be in a high risk category. The expected dose you have to consume to sustain the level to be at the decreased chances of becoming vitamin C deficient during the sepsis was probably at the minimum of 500 milligrams a day. Let me give you an example. An orange on average contains 50 to 60 milligrams. It's going to be quite impractical to eat 10 oranges a day. You're probably going to get a diarrhea, and it's going to be quite expensive. So you can, but it's going to be quite hard to do right now. I would frankly recommend that you, if you feel like you're getting enough, sure, that's great. But everybody else, myself included, I probably wouldn't rely on that exclusively unless I really pay close attention to what I'm doing. So the quick answer is yes, but it's a caveat that you have to be quite aggressive. Okay, so what is your recommendation about bringing groceries home? Is it true that you have to wipe out down all the produce? Great question. So, you know, first of all, I think the quick answer is yes. The long answer, maybe while it's the quick answer is yes, it's kind of hard to do. And certain groceries are protected from the inside. So if you're bringing something else, something that hands could not have touched, like let's say you're opening the bag of a cereal and it's a carton box, but inside you have a plastic bag. If you can throw the carton box and just take out without touching the outside internal plastic bag, that plastic bag is going to be clean, machine pack that. But the cartoon potentially was touched by somebody's hands, and that you should consider contaminated. So yes, we've been disinfecting all the surfaces, like the Amazon packages. We spray them with antiviral or antimicrobial spray before we open them up, just to give you an idea. You can do the same with all the groceries. I wouldn't spray anything because all those sprays have toxins in them, so I wouldn't spray anything that you're directly going to eat. So I would probably just wash them with soap and water, and that should be sufficient. So let's say you get a bag of apples, you could open them up right into your sink, throw the plastic bag, wash the apples one by one with soap, and then you've decontaminated that area. And while you're washing the apples, you're probably also washing your hands. You can also open everything up with gloves, throw the gloves out, and then wash everything wash with gloves and then throw the gloves out. So there is several videos on YouTube on doing that. So maybe if anybody is interested, we'll try to share it. Well, there's a lot of messages. So what I'm going to do, we are going to stay on time. Oh, thank you. There's somebody who, those of you interested, has shared grocery video on YouTube. Thank you very much for Eva and Kathy who shared that with us. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to invite us all to take a comfortable position as we're going to shift into our practices. And I'm going to hand it over to Jack, and I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so it's a little quieter. So go ahead, Jack.
Great. Thanks, Misha. Thanks for all the information and for everybody who's here paying attention, which is helps my immune system immensely. The practice I'd like to do today, I actually learned, I don't know, almost 50 years ago from Joan Boroshenko. And it's the simplest, most effective practice that I do. It's very concrete. Some people will not like it, and that's okay. But I would suggest that you try it for a while first before you not like it, since there is a little bit of a uncomfortable feeling as you begin to get into it. But
Jack, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. Just so everybody aware, those of you, can you see my screen where the practice is listed? Those of you who like to read instructions. Okay. So you should be able to see it. And Jack, go ahead and continue so that you can also read the instructions on the screen.
Right. But if you could give me full face again, they can read the instructions afterwards. Oh, great. Okay, thank you. So this practice is simply counting from 1 to 10. Probably the practice of counting sheep to fall asleep came from this practice, but the practice itself is a couple thousand years old. And all you have to do is count from 1 to 10. And I recommend that you count your breath. And by a breath, I mean an in and an out is one breath. So breathing in and breathing out. And if you have specific breathing techniques like diaphragmatic breathing or diaphragmatic chest breathing, go ahead and use that. It helps, but it's not an intrinsic part of the practice. So what you're doing is you're counting your breath, and you go up to 10. And when you get to 10, you go back to 1. And that's it. And I'm going to recommend that you get a timer. And if you're new to this practice, I would start at 4 minutes. Now, the minute, and we're going to try to do a little bit of this practice so you could ask me questions about how it goes. But you will notice that when you're doing this, that thoughts begin to intrude. Some thoughts are more powerful than others, but they're all thoughts, and they can be good thoughts or what we call negative thoughts, doesn't matter. Any thought that distracts you from your counting so that you forget where you are, or you encounter the thought long enough so that you've been away from the counting for a little while, even though you remember where you are, you go back to 1. Let me repeat that. That's pretty clear, but anytime you forget where you are, you go back to 1. If you have the kind of mind that can remember where you are, but can also think something else at the same time, which mine does, by the way, if I go over a count of 3, then I go back to 1. So you're always allowing yourself to focus only on the numbers. In fact, I use a visualization. I see the number in front of me. 1, breathe in and out. 2, breathe in and out. So that as you do this, you will notice that usually in the beginning it's a little uncomfortable and you wish you weren't doing it. And other things come into your mind, like you forgot to turn the iron off or whatever it is. So when that occurs, when you have thoughts that are not just like passing through, but thoughts that are more powerful and want your full attention, what I would suggest doing is what I call catch and release. And it's a form of mindfulness, but it's to notice the thought. You notice it, you hold it in your attention for just a brief moment, not even a breath, and you let it go. And you just keep repeating it. And the thoughts may come back over and over again. It's okay. You keep counting. Now, after a while, what will begin to happen is you will begin to develop a certain kind of strength of focus, of concentration. This will allow you to start to make choices, like when you're asked to upregulate or downregulate, go into anxiety and chaos, or stay centered in peace and love, whatever your choices are. This will give you a little more energy and the ability to make a choice that suits your integrity. I know I can see, looking at the faces here, I know you all have an enormous amount of integrity. That's to say that you wish to be compassionate, loving human beings with a certain degree of honesty about who you are. And this will enable you to begin to make those choices. So I'm going to review it quickly one more time, and then we're going to do the practice so you can ask me any questions that might come up. Again, counting 1 to 10 is all you're doing, and I'm counting the breath. And a count for me is a breath in and a breath out. You can, in fact, count breath out and count breath in as 2 and so on, but I find it easier to do in and out. So you do this practice. Anytime a thought comes up, you honor it, let it go. Should you lose track of where you're counting, you go back to 1. And you just keep doing it over and over until you reach your time limit. And I'm going to suggest that you start at 4 minutes. And you can have your eyes open or closed. I prefer closed. Now, I will say that one of the things you have to be careful of in this practice, especially as you do it more consistently and lengthen the practice, I'm recommending that once you're comfortable, you add a minute until you're comfortable again, and then add another minute. The average is 5 to 10 minutes. I like to do it for around 20. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of at this point is that you can begin to experience states of joy or ecstasy, as well as states of profound despair. Doesn't matter, either one. You simply continue to count, okay? It doesn't matter what you're feeling. This is not about product. If it happens to put you into a state of ecstasy, great. If it happens to put you into childhood feeling memory, okay. Not so much fun, but there it is. Keep counting. Okay, you ready? So we're not going to do this for very long. We're going to simply take a minute and a half, which is not very long, but it'll give you a sense of how this works. So let's say close your eyes so that you're not distracted by the screen in this case. Okay, we're just going to begin and breathing in and breathing out, and that's 1. Do it at your own pace. All right, I think I'm back. Okay, any questions about the practice itself? Okay, I don't see any questions. Good, it's a fairly simple practice. It's highly effective. And
Jack, there's a
yes,
question. Do you breathe in and out through the nose?
I do. I think that breathing in and out through the nose, breathing diaphragmatically with chest expansion is probably very effective, but any breath that you can focus on and count is what works here. And I think if you did it for the short time that we did it, you can begin to get a sense of what it takes to maintain focus. I have to say that after a while, I get to love this practice. I love, like, one, oh boy, one, wow. And then, oh, here comes two. And what that does for me, it really begins to open myself up, well, to what Stephen Porges, would call the social engagement network, or where my nervous system and my brain are reaching into an expansion where I can feel that I belong. And when I feel that I belong, I feel healthy.
So there's another question. Do we count to 10 and then back down to 1 and back to 10 again?
Good question. I've done both ways. Now I go to 10 and I go back to 1. If you want to, you can count backwards. I find it sharpens my focus a little bit to do it that way. It's a little harder. But it's also easier to lose track. So I just go back to 1.
Well, thank you, Jack. And with that, we're going to transition to a second practice. So today's both practices have counts involved. This was done on purpose. So those of you who like to remember different practices that involved very simple way of breathing, you can choose either one or do both. So the second practice is a variation of an old yogic pranayama breath that the practice is called 4-7-8. It involves inhale on count of 4, holding on count of 7, and exhaling on count of 8. And we'll do the practice in a few minutes. The reason for this breaths has more to do with how our diaphragm can control the rest, or what's called the parasympathetic and sympathetic autonomic nervous system. So when we activate parasympathetic or rest and digest system, we're able to pretty quickly, within a couple of minutes, to move from the stressful situation to a much more relaxed state. So this practice can be used at any time during the day. It can also be used acutely when something stressed you quite significantly and you simply want to take a pause and quickly regain your balance and your relaxed state. You can engage this practice. I'm going to put it on a screen right now so you can see the explanation. And also, the practice has variations, because those of you who are new to different breathing practices, you may find inhaling on 4, holding on breath on 7, and exhaling on 8 a little challenging. If that happens, one thing you can do, you can either remove 7, so you're just inhaling on 4 and exhaling on 8, or you can inhale on 3 and exhale on 6. The core of this practice has to do with the ratio of length of inhalation to exhalation. Your exhalation needs to be twice as long as inhalation. And that will allow the diaphragm to control the parasympathetic tone. So enhance it and put you into more rested, relaxed state. So what I will do now for the next probably 2 or 3 minutes or so, I'm going to guide us all into this breath. If you find that you're struggling because I'm counting too slow, or you're just not used to it, I highly recommend you pick your own pace. And again, your options are either to drop the 7 and do inhale 4, exhale 8, or inhale 3 and exhale 6. Okay, so with that, we're going to begin. If you keep your eyes closed and then you forgot the counts, just open your eyes and the counts are on your screen. You should be able to see them right now. So let's all inhale and exhale together, and then we'll begin. Inhale and exhale and begin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and go ahead and proceed on your own for 2 or 3 more minutes. Okay, and then take one more breath in and out, and so we finish all together. And come back to the room, open your eyes. So those of you who have questions about this practice, go ahead and type them up. This also leaves us about 5 minutes or so for additional questions. And beyond that, Jack and I going to stay for at least 10 more minutes or so if there are continuously more questions. And does anyone want to say how they feel now after these 2 practices? I'm gonna stop the sharing. Okay, Jack, you were muted, so if you want to say a few words, sorry.
It felt really good to be muted. Yeah.
So this second practice we did, one way I would encourage some of you to try it, if you have a hard time falling asleep, or you feel that your thoughts are racing at the end of the day, that's a very good practice to do even when you're laying down, before you go to bed. It's a very shifting practice. It allows us to end our day away from the busy mind, which right now probably most of us are in the continuous, slightly over, or not so slightly in my case, overstimulated life engagement. So that to do with this practice, that when you exhale, you don't have to engage that directly. Important is the counts of the breath, because it's the overall expansion of all of the cavity, including the diaphragm. It's important. You don't have to pay special attention to the diaphragm. But it's a good question. Thank you. Yes, so thank you, Dr. Frame. So quick question. So those of you who feel like the time somehow doesn't work for you, or you feel that the sequence of class is a little off, definitely share with us. We're learning how to do this better every time we're doing it. So we will be modifying the flow and changing the practices. And I also want to remind you that if you want to learn more about AIM, you can email us at info@healthaim.org. You can also look us up at healthaim.org website. And also those of you who are interested more in an academic side of this work, you can visit George Washington University Office of Integrative Medicine and Integrative Medicine Programs. We have a big event coming up, Song Symposium on healthy living, healthy longevity and cognitive function, with a highlight of having Dr. Victor Longo, who's a very well-known expert in longevity in UC, I want to say UCLA, but I may not be correct on that. So hope that you will be able to join us for that. And again, you can find that information at George Washington Office of Integrative Medicine. There is a question. I'll answer that privately. Let's see. Okay. All right. So welcome, Sarah Mayer from Tunisia. And 5 hours work works for you. Very good. That's good to know.
Hi, and welcome to the GW Center for Integrative Medicine. My name is Mara Benner.
That's Angela in the corner testing the Office of Integrative Medicine guest.
It's I just like to say thank you to everybody that came. It's one of my current areas of exploration is during this time of pandemic. What happens when we have a pandemic of love and attention? And I think that it's useful to see how our nervous systems begin to synchronize, not just in terms of, crowd immunity, but a sense of we're all in this together. And I also just want to give AIM a plug, because one of the greatest health benefits you can do, according to a lot of the neuroscience I'm seeing, is to give service, is to reach out and be connected to all people, so that those of us who are suffering more than others, we can hold in our hearts in both practical ways and at the same time belonging ways, that we all belong together. So thank you for showing up and allowing me to be part of this.
Thank you, Jack. There's a concrete, specific question from Danielle. Would you be able to say something else about melatonin? You mentioned, yes. So my recommendation is similar to vitamin C, that melatonin is right now we all should be considered to take. And again, this has nothing to do with how you sleep. It is more that melatonin appears to be a pretty potent regulator of inflammatory response, meaning it down-regulates a cytokine storm. And the dose is somewhere between 2 to 4 milligrams. Usually I recommend 3 milligrams at bedtime. And at the first onset of symptoms, you double the dose to 5 or 6 milligrams. And again, this work based on two things, is on the fact that we do know that melatonin has a pretty potent potential to down-regulate inflammatory responses. By the way, including the cancer. That's why quite often patients with cancer recommended to take high-dose melatonin. And the second is that we do know that with age past 10 to 12 years old, melatonin production decrease, and there's been pretty interesting correlation between mortality of COVID-19 with melatonin production. I don't think it's a proven, but the curve seems to fit right perfectly, meaning that kids under age of 12, the mortality is basically unknown. So there's no child under age of 10 have passed away from COVID-19. Now, whether that's a causality relationship or some unusual association, of course, we don't know. But nonetheless, it's an interesting fact. Jack, there's a question for you. Do you have any video of your practice I can share with our community partners?
The practice we just did? I'll make one.
Yes, we'll make one.
I usually do this in person.
Thank you, Christina, for challenging him. Okay. So what about vitamin D? So vitamin D, in my opinion, is if your vitamin D general level is normal, you're not vitamin D deficient. I'm not exactly sure that taking high doses has a strong evidence of support. However, if you do decide to take some extra right now, I doubt that it's going to somehow harm you. It's pretty difficult to overdose on vitamin D in a short period of time, even if you take pretty high doses. So I'll probably leave it at that. So somebody is pointing out, so I'm taking 10 milligram melatonin for cancer. I met with an oncologist, nutritionist, and she recommended upping to 20 and 40. So 40 milligrams, I've never heard of this dose, but the 20 milligram is the correct, highly evidenced dose due to several large trials, including a meta-analysis of more than 10,000 patients with different solid tumors, pointing out to the effective dose of being 20 milligrams. I think the 40 milligrams may be a little hard to take. I have a lot of my patients struggling to take even 20 due to the morning after lethargy and just discomfortable feeling of having too much melatonin in the system. So, but if you're already taking 10 and you want to go up to 20, I don't see any reason why not to do it. Definitely in terms of down-regulating cytokine storm, you're already taking more than needed, so there's no reason to worry about that. So there's another question from Mickey. For those of us who think we might have already had a mild case of coronavirus, but we were not sick enough to get tested, can you explain if there will be a way in some point to be tested to know? Okay, it's a great question. So there is no point in testing with a current CDC-approved test for one simple reason. If you don't have symptoms anymore, the test is going to be negative. Current CDC-approved tests, the only set of tests that are available there are throat and intranasal swabs, pharynx, I'm sorry, not deeper throat, and deep nose swabs. Once we're symptom-free, the chances of the test being positive are very slim, and so you are running high likelihood of false negative test. It is my understanding that as of today, there is no approved CDC serology antibody test, which is the test you would want to do to confirm the infection after you had it. My understanding is there are multiple commercial labs that already developed this test, and the current FDA stand on this is that they will not regulate those tests. The problem is because it's unfortunately a very bad situation with the test. There are a lot of different ones, and their quality is very questionable. It's very hard to say which tests are going to be accurate. Unfortunately, I cannot give you more recommendation than that, and I will have to wait and see how the CDC and FDA will continue to regulate this. And I wish I'd give you a better answer, but it's a really good question. So for now, unfortunate answer, Miki, is no, we don't have an answer to this question, but definitely do not try to get swab, because it's only going to increase chances of false negative test at the moment. And both CDC and FDA and our own institutions and local governments, all three, do not recommend testing of asymptomatic patients, even if you had the disease already, if you think so. Is there a way to upload an image into the chat? I'm not aware of that. I don't know. Yeah, you can copy paste something into the chat under paste function. That's about all I can see. So. Melatonin can have negative interactions with other drugs, worth checking. Yes, absolutely. That's why if you're taking more than 3 milligrams, my recommendation would be that make sure somebody guiding you on the administration of melatonin. I think 3 milligrams or less interactions are probably going to be pretty unlikely, although again, worth checking if you're concerned. So I think with that, okay, there's a last question. Okay, we'll take the last question. Do we develop immunity after infection? It's a critical question. The current belief on this is that it's yes, but unfortunately, we don't think that that immunity lasts for a very long time. There already has been several cases of people presenting with two different infections with the original virus and the mutated one. Is this gonna evolve somehow? We don't know. So I think, unfortunately, we don't have a really clear answer to that question. All right, there's one more question that's come. My father has been sick for 10 days, was tested, but he still has not received his results. He's feeling better. Is it? No. So what you want to do is you want to not visit him for at least the 7 days after he became asymptomatic. So you need to wait not for 10 days since he's been sick, but for 7 days after he's completely recovered. And then it'll probably be relatively safe from that point. But actually, I think also that guideline is continuously changing. Okay, and with that, no, I don't recommend using melatonin with children. Absolutely unnecessary. They have an endogenous, very high production. There hasn't been any deaths in pediatric population under 10. So don't think about that. Probably not even under age of 15 or so. Well, thank you, everybody. We hope to see you all in next week, next Friday. And again, if you have questions or anything else that you want to communicate with us, please don't hesitate at info@healthaim.org. And Jack, do you want to say the last word of wisdom?
Well, I just want to say we're all in this together. Thank God.
I mean, yes. Bye, everybody.